So welcome everyone to the stream this week, and I admit I'm a little frustrated with poor William in the chat room this week, because he's been pushing me to watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes for weeks, and I finally did, and I told him I watched it, and he said, "You watched it wrong. You should have watched the movies. You should have done that thing I asked you to do. You should have done it this way." So, yeah. And I get it. There are sometimes, better or worse ways to see something. But this is one of the difficulties with this, not a job, this position, is that folks recommend you things a lot. Recommend things to you a lot. And then you get these... you find out there are actually better ways to watch them than what they've recommended watching it, and it's like, well, then why didn't they tell me about that? And why, do they just forget or what? So, oh well. Glad to be with you all. Not trying to, beat on anyone here. Just one of those funny things in life. Hope we'll get some more folks in here in a little bit for the giveaway of memories. Going away to one lucky person in the chat room. The Hong Kong dub. It's no problem, William. We're all good. It's all good. This is a very bare bones Hong Kong release of memories. With, I'm sure, a Hong Kong sub, which would be interesting. But I will go to somebody in the chat room. Yeah, my initial impression of Legend of Galactic Heroes was not positive. I will probably watch a little bit more, but that first episode was not. It was bland. It was very bland. They introduce you to a huge number of characters, many of which don't have anything to do in the first episode. Well, several of which have nothing to do in the first episode. So that's kind of frustrating. Where I'm like, oh, but why are you showing me this person if he has nothing to do yet? If he has no role yet. And then a lot of the characters, and they also do this annoying thing of soldiers not acting like soldiers. Of soldiers kind of setting up this strategy and they're not executing it for reasons. It's just kind of like, okay, so you have these three forces around this one force. The one force starts to move, and two of the forces do nothing. Like, isn't the whole point of having all of you surrounding this one force that you would all... attack, but you just kind of let that one force attack the other force and do nothing while it attacks the other. What? So anyway, not an auspicious start for a story like that. As I said, I'll give it another episode or two, and we'll see. But it just wasn't really my thing, unfortunately. But such is life. Let's go ahead and get to the news for the week. And let's see here. Yeah, we're fine, William. Yeah, I'm internet frustrated, not really frustrated. You're fine. Okay, I just need to pull over the news here and pull up the story so I know what to talk about. All right, let's do the news. And welcome back, everyone, to the latest anime news for the week ending January 5th, 2018. Welcome to the new year. Starting with some news about the much beleaguered service from Amazon, Anime Strike. The Anime Strike service has been shut down, but don't worry if you already have a subscription. Anime Strike was sort of a sub-service within Amazon Prime, where if you subscribe for an extra couple dollars a month to Anime Strike, you got access to a bunch of simulcasts, unique simulcasts of anime. And Amazon decided to basically cut that out and fold that into Amazon Prime. So now it's just part of your Amazon Prime subscription, if you have one. And it's just there. You don't have to subscribe to Amazon Strike. In addition to that, if you have subscribed to Amazon Strike, or I'm sorry, to Anime Strike, they will prorate your subscriptions. Whatever you would have paid for beyond this, however much more of your subscription you would have paid for, they're going to refund you back. So that's cool. Good of them to do that. I'm not sure if this means that they're cutting back on the amount of anime they're licensing and simulcasting, but we'll see. I know they have decided they're going to do some things for the upcoming season, but who knows how much of an impact, in other words, this will have on their anime streaming in general. But for now, Anime Strike is gone, and you don't have to pay for it anymore, which is, awfully nice. Moving on to some anime announcement news. Everyone loves that. A new Tiger and Bunny anime project has been announced. It will be a series announced on their Twitter account, the Sunrise Studios Twitter account. For those not familiar, Tiger and Bunny is a story about superheroes in a world where superheroing is so expensive you have to have corporate sponsors. So superheroes run around the city, solving crimes or stopping crimes with corporate logos plastered on their backs, kind of like a big sporting event. So it's this interesting sort of commentary on sort of modern culture and so forth and so on. Also interesting for the fact that a lot of the sponsors were real companies in the show. So a new anime series is coming along. We still don't know who's going to be involved. The director of the original series we know is not involved. He just tweeted and said, by the way, I'm not involved. We don't know anything thus far about it beyond that, but that's cool. More Tiger and Bunny sounds like an interesting concept and a premise that certainly can be used for more interesting commentary on the world. Some more news on Violet Evergarden, Kyoto Animation's next series. It's a little confusing. Netflix is listing Violet Evergarden with a new episode January 11th in Canada, the UK, and the Philippines. There's still no listing for the series in Japan or the US on Netflix. Very confusing. Now, the show will premiere in Japan on January 10th, like outside of Netflix. And Netflix has said they're going to license or they're going to stream the series worldwide. So still a little unclear. And the weird thing is that the official website for the series says it's going to stream in Japan in spring of this year. Still a lot of weirdness and confusion around when Violet Evergarden is actually going to be available, but who knows? Hopefully at some point we will get that and it will be around. But yeah, they're kind of trying to let us know, sort of. Good news for fans of Love Live Sunshine, however. There's going to be a new anime film coming out for Love Live Sunshine. Again, came from the Twitter account for the franchise. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all we know. There's going to be a new film, but hey, good news there. Finally, Your Name aired on TV this past week. And that was on, I believe, Wednesday of this week. And it got a 17.4% ratings in its time slot, meaning that basically 17.4% of people watching television in Japan tuned in to watch Your Name when it was on, which is a pretty darn high percentage. So good on you, Your Name, for doing that. That is higher than Shin Godzilla got on November 12th, which had a ratings of 15%. So that's pretty darn cool. Lots of interest in Your Name still. Not everyone in Japan went to see Your Name, apparently, but in theaters, that is. So yes, Your Name is still riding the wave over there in Japan. So that does it for the news for this week. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I hope to see you again next week right here. And now, I will be right back.
Yes, fun to see, fun to drive, fun to buy. The new Chevrolet.
This is a C-124, the largest transport plane in the Air Force. It's no picnic flying a payload over country like this. And when ice fog moves in over those mountains, then you're heading for trouble. Enter GCA, Ground Control Approach, the eyes of the Air Force, guiding planes to safety in bad weather situations. Every precaution is taken, including an emergency standby generator. Oh, ice fog's really socking in now.
51054, I have you in radar contact. Ceiling is 0. Visibility 1/16 of a mile with ice fog over.
Roger, understand the weather. The ice fog up here is pretty bad. Let's make it good the first time, over.
Perform your final cockpit check. Your gear down and locked, over.
Roger, cockpit check completed. Gear down and locked, 5-4.
Roger, 51054, your pilot controller.
This is what the boys in the Arctic call a hairy situation. Our C-124 is flying totally blind through a treacherous ice-fogged mountain range, completely dependent upon GCA for its safe landing.
Roger, your heading is 235. You're correcting over to the on course nicely. Your heading is 235. Now right, 3 degrees, heading 238.
Stand by. Power failure. All contact with plane lost. The switch is turned on. The standby emergency generator, dependent on battery power, springs into instant action. The life-saving signal is resumed.
5 miles east of the field. Continue heading 240 at 2,000, over.
Roger, nice approach going tower frequency.
Your heading is 238. You're now over touchdown point. Take over, complete your landing. Roger.
We're home. Another Air Force mission accomplished. No sweat, thanks to GCA. Once the C-124 is safely down, the ground crew rolls out to greet her. Tractors, tow trucks, forklifts, and tankers, all dependent on battery power, gather around the giant bird to unload and service her. Fresh power, dependable power is needed here. Absolutely fresh power, like the Delco dry charge battery. None of its vital power can waste away because this battery comes bone dry. Only when fluid is added does a Delco dry charge battery come to life. Ready for fast starts, dependable performance anywhere, under all conditions. When it's time to replace, make sure you get all the power you paid for. Power that can't get old before it's sold. Delco Dry Charge Battery, made by the Delco Remy division of General Motors. Delco, available through the United Motors system and its independent dealers and distributors.
And we're back. There we go. Just needed a minute to rearrange all that stuff. So, hope you like that. I've actually been going through the Pralinger archives, which are a bunch of old public domain stuff. I shouldn't say just say old, public domain materials, and pulling out some interesting old ads. Not just ads, but the interesting ones. The ones that kind of tell a story, or otherwise have interesting animation or stuff like that. So I'll be featuring a few of those now and again. So thanks for that information, William. I will track down those movies and give those a try before moving on to the TV series. That's good to know for Galactic Heroes. Welcome, Raven. Welcome, Master Chief. Welcome, Liquidus. Good to see you all. Is that the formula now, that in the movie they all disband? Fair enough. Well, given the fact that wasn't it that one of the Love Live voice actresses has now moved on to become a freelancer? So maybe that's a hint, you know, things are changing along. Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued that they decided to, instead of making Anime Strike just its own standalone free service, they decided to get rid of it altogether and just fold it into Amazon Prime. I think it's probably just a branding thing where for Amazon it's better for them to just have everything under Prime, as opposed to trying to create a whole bunch of little sort of sub-brands for every little thing. You know, that's the only reason I can think of doing that. So, thanks for letting me take that break. I was violently ill earlier this week. Just absolutely miserable for like about 36 hours straight, and then been slowly getting better ever since then. This is my first real full day feeling normal. So, yeah, I have to occasionally take breaks. We'll just put it that way. Alright, so let's move on from this to a dramatic reading. I've got a lot of stuff planned for tonight. We'll be doing dramatic reading. We'll be doing a great debate, the Great Debate, a new show, or new segment, if you will, for our little discussions with the chat today on Is the Manga Better? Why is the manga better, so to say. So, good question, Marvin. We don't know if Violet Evergarden is going to be everything. I think Violet Evergarden will be weekly on Netflix. I can't imagine them breaking street date for every episode of Violet Evergarden. That would really surprise me as a structure. But you never know, right? But yeah, I think it's going to be weekly for Violet Evergarden. Yeah, well, idol series are nothing if not formulaic. You know, I'm not complaining. That's just kind of the reality of it. So let's do a dramatic reading. Oh, we'll also be doing Otaku no Cooking, if all goes well. In other words, if I don't have any, if I don't fall over sick again, we'll be making chocolate and caramel covered shortbread cookies over in there. Hey, Jude! Welcome back. Good to see you. And as I mentioned before, we're going to switch over from here to Twitch for the cooking episodes. So, doing better, Jude, now. As I mentioned, I was very ill earlier in the week, but I seem to have recovered from that reasonably well. Yes, absolutely cooking this week, unless everything, like I said, unless we have huge problems, and assuming that Twitch works over there in the kitchen. But that is the plan. So, let's move on to a dramatic reading this week. This is an interesting one. Looked through a lot of posts this week for dramatic reading, and I found one that actually has a response that I thought was particularly helpful. So let's transition to that. Remind myself of this. Oh yeah, okay. So we're ready to go over on the dramatic reading. All right. Hello. Today's dramatic reading has to do with an anime post from 20 years ago this week. It is a rather critical post about Ghost in the Shell and Akira. Now, understand that means the first Ghost in the Shell film and the Akira film. That was all of Ghost in the Shell that was animated at that point, 20 years ago. And we have a post and a response. So we'll start with the original post, and as usual, I'm going to be kind and use only first names here. The topic is, or the subject is, Thumbs Down for Ghost in the Shell and Akira by Edward. I had about as much fun watching Ghost in the Shell and Akira as I would have had chewing off my own fingernails. I recognize the innovative techniques employed by both authors, and compliment the films for their theatrical prowess. But lines like, "I am everything," are reminiscent of theological rhetoric that makes me nauseate. Everything what? Those kind of statements are without literal meaning, a logic error called faulty dilemma, a statement that does not exhaust the possibilities, e.g., better dead than red. Not done. As for that boat dream sequence in Ghost in the Shell, that was about titillating as imagining Janet Reno in a thong bikini dancing to YMCA. It didn't advance the plot any, or provide the viewer with some profound insight, but served only to hone my fast-forwarding skills. Signature, a link to a Ninja Scroll website. response from Carl Horn. Now, Carl, I should point out, is a long-standing and well-respected anime fan who decided to respond to this particular post after it had devolved into talking about Wings of Honey and Mise as well. So I should explain, because he mentions Wings of Honey and Mise as being kind of in the same vein. To me, Wings is the pillar of cloud by day, and Akira the pillar of fire by night. I wouldn't hesitate to list both amongst the top 10 anime films ever made. It is unfortunate that Akira's success in America led some to think that all anime should be like it, and that deserving films came nowhere near Akira's box office. But that doesn't take anything away from Akira itself. It's an unsurpassed vision of power and chaos, of the end of the world, not hard SF or comedy of manners. Asking that Akira make more sense is like asking the Book of Revelations to stop speaking in metaphors. That is, it's a somewhat misplaced request. So yeah, that's how you respond to a post like that. Wow. Burn! Thank you. That's pretty much exactly it. And I speak as somebody who has a similar reaction to Akira, where I'm not impressed by the plot, so to speak. I'm not impressed by all that stuff, but it is an experience. You know, it is a vision of a particular set of things happening, and a set of emotions, and a set of concerns about, like, you know, Japan and its future and so forth. You know, it's not meant to be a logical, clear progression of this happens and this happens and this happens. It's like I think I was mentioning last week. There's a difference between simple and complex, and that, you know, complex doesn't mean bad. Complex doesn't mean, you know, it should always, you know, complex can be good. It just has to be handled a certain way. Similarly, Akira is an emotional experience, and it should be appreciated as such. Anyway, yeah, he was really mad about Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and had the misfortune to post in a chat room that people with clear feelings about it. And I should point out in these responses, the guy wasn't flamed. People didn't scream and yell at him. There was no flaming. There was no flaming to be seen at all. They disagreed, and they said, basically, well, you know, I thought it was very impressive in this way, or, you know, I generally agree, you know, in one sense, but I think this. It was a very civil conversation, as was typical of the internet 20 years ago, before the great AOL invasion. But yeah, that was an interesting thing. Welcome, Karian. Yeah, that was a fun one. And other folks mentioned that actually it was I Am Tetsuo, not I Am Everything, unless you watched some weird version. I don't know. Oh well. You know, what can you do? Yes, the great AOL invasion. Basically, AOL, America Online, opened up. It used to be a walled garden. You could only be on AOL. And then they opened up access to the internet from AOL, including news groups and Usenet, which were the chat rooms at the time. It was a specialized technology for, not chat rooms, I'm sorry, they were message boards, specialized message boards. And that was where these discussions took place. There were no, there were some web forums by this point, but it was very crude technology at the time. So news groups was how it all happened, and then AOL folks showed up, and they had no idea what they were doing, and AOL's interface was quite crude, so they kept just saying, hey, hi, how do I do this? What should I do next? Is this a thing I should click? What is this? And they just flooded and overwhelmed, and they were generally not particularly polite, and they just overwhelmed all the message boards, and they all died. All of the great discussion going on at the time essentially collapsed and fell apart. and everyone had to scurry off to various parts of the internet. But basically, if you want to talk about any particular topic, there was one place to go on the internet where there was a discussion about that, and it was generally quite civil, and very civil by modern standards, modern internet standards. And that all died when AOL opened up to everyone else. So such a shame, but that is the kind of thing that can happen in these sorts of things. All right, so that was that. That was a dramatic reading. How are you all doing this week? Have you guys been watching any anime? Reading any manga? I'll talk a bit about what I've been doing as I wait for the chat room. Joe asked what I think of Discord. Discord's better than many. Like you say, it's a decent IRC emulation. I have found a lot of the same problems with curating discussion that you get where Discord conversation tends to wander a lot. And conversation wandered back then too, but I don't know, the level of conversation doesn't seem as high. The level of I don't want to say thoughtful, because that's a bit overreaching, but I think Discord is definitely getting closer to what we had back then. Definitely, compared to a lot of the other options right now. Watching Majesty's Bride, awesome. I need to catch up on that. Finished Fate Apocrypha, awesome. Yes, I finished. What do you call it? I finished Cutie Honey, the original Cutie Honey anime series this past week. I should point out I watched the first quarter of Cutie Honey and the last quarter because it's completely episodic. There's just no, nothing really else. There are a few events that happen where, like, Cutie loses her house at one point and has to move somewhere else. But other than that, it's very episodic. And so, got to the ending, which is kind of trippy. It's a very trippy anime series, but fun. Very ridiculous in its own way. And, I mean, it's not for everyone. It is very 70s, but interesting. I think civility would be much greater on the internet if people used their real names online, didn't hide behind a masked username alias. So I certainly agree with you that anonymity is part of the problem. Anonymity is important and necessary in some contexts where, whistleblowers, for example, have to be anonymous. But I think that's a very specific situation that the software can provide as an exception rather than the rule. This is why I use my real name online, have been for years, and if you go to BrettNewhall.com, you can find my phone number. I've had my actual phone number on my website for over 10 years now. And I have not yet, as far as I know, gotten a crank phone call. I'm sure that'll change someday. Then I'll just change my phone number, Then you have problems with, swatting and such like that. Right? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know it's that hard to go from online profile to real name either. So I think when you jump from there to there to there, in other words, I think it's not that many steps from online handle to real mailing address versus real name to mailing address. Page King of Hearts, change of memory, nice. Do I have a MyAnimeList profile? I do not, because I started making a web page. I started a web page some years ago where I kept track of the anime I own. This is before like Mal and the other sites existed, actually, or they were just starting up in some cases. And so I built this web page just really quick to do it. And then once Mal and Anime Planet and the other sites added that functionality, I put so much time into the web page that I actually created a Mal profile and started filling it out and realized I would have to spend like dozens of hours filling out Mal for all the anime I've watched. And it's not to brag, it's just there's so much to make it accurate, and I kind of want to make it accurate. So maybe dozens of hours is an overstatement, but I was like, I don't want to spend 10 hours on this thing when I already have a web page for it. So go to brentnewhall.com and click on the anime link. And that is effectively my Mal profile of all the anime I own and have watched and so forth. BrentNewhall.com. That is the easiest way of getting there. And I think if you go to Geek Archaeology on the About, it links to my website, so you can get there that way. But yeah, it's kind of funny. Oh, had problems with a Chrome plugin. That sucks. But yeah, again, I have nothing against Mal or any of those sites. I don't think they're a waste of time. It's just I have all this time sunk into that one web page, and I also have that little niggling thing in the back of my mind that what if Mal goes away? You know, what if what if just next month, you know, they announce, oh, by the way, my anime list is getting shut down because we can't pay our bills for whatever reason, you know, or NADB or ANN or whatever. You know, it's a ridiculous thing, but given the time I need to do all that, it hasn't happened yet. Oh well, maybe one of these days I'll kind of, that'll all make sense for me to do that. All right, so let's talk a bit about the, so I mentioned that I did finish The Sisters All You Need, which I'll review tonight. And then I watched first episode of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, as I mentioned to William earlier tonight, which was kind of interesting, but like I mentioned there, you know, didn't really pull me in. So I'll try the movies and see where we go from there. Yeah, exactly. I picked up the Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5 special edition combo pack deal of the month limited special collection. I don't know, for PS4 recently. So I've still got a backlog to get to that, but we'll see. Oh, I should mention, before anyone asks, I had planned on playing some more Nier, or at least some video game at some point on Sunday, to sort of start building up more and streaming more of that. But I got violently ill on Sunday, so that didn't happen. I was not going to be doing anything on Sunday. So hopefully this Sunday I will get back into that and finish up Nier, or at least, you know, make some serious progress on Nier. Hopefully finish that in the next few weeks, and then move on to some other games. Got plenty in the backlog to eventually stream, and I want to play Monster Hunter when it comes out. I definitely want to stream that when that becomes available, because I think that'll be a fun game, interesting game. And then probably Ni no Kuni 2 when it comes out. Haven't touched Ni no Kuni, but it sounds like I can play Ni no Kuni 2 without a problem. You don't need to have watched the original one. Oh, so actually, Wong Li, I have played the Seal Experiments Lane PS1 game. I have it on emulation here. So I played through a couple hours of that game. Unfortunately, it's very hard to figure out. Like, it is not a traditional game. The interface and the progression through that game is like nothing you've ever played before. I'm quite confident in that fact. So I kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, what do I have no idea what you do next. The game is not telling me anything of that. Have I ever played the Civilization games? Yes, I played some of Civ 5. Got really addicted to that for like a weekend, and then put it down and was like, I need to stop and, you know, only turn this on the next time like I really can. Unfortunately, I've been able to stay away from it since then. And I played, I think, demos for like Civ 2 back in the day. So I feel like I've owned one of the Civilization games at one point. I know I've played one or two of the demos. But yeah, Civ 5 was definitely one of those, ooh, this is one more turn. Yeah, exactly. Lane's more like interactive media than a game. But there is some kind of sort of progression to it. And then I also had this problem that my emulator, when I tried to switch disks in the emulator, it caused the emulator to crash. So I don't quite know... Oh, actually, it didn't cause it to crash. It just wouldn't work. Like, nothing actually happened. So I think there's something weird going on there. I'll have to dig more into the emulator and what I need to do. Maybe I did it wrong. I tried it a few times, never worked. So, but I could definitely do like a, what do you call a review when like you haven't finished the game, but you know you can't, or it's not going to happen, and you want to kind of give your initial impressions, kind of thing. Maybe impressions. I'll give my impressions of the Lane game at some point. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts is nuts in terms of all the releases and all that. I cannot keep track. And then first impressions. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. That's exactly what I should call it. So we'll see. Need to record some footage. Oh, by the way, I did get an Elgato this week. So you may have seen on the Twitch channel. I have a quick video of just plugging in the Switch and streaming the Switch on that. Unfortunately, my setup is not conducive to streaming on the Elgato, so I need a few more cables to actually get that routed up correctly. In other words, my console stuff is my video game stuff is in the other room, my PC's in here, so making all that work is kind of complicated. So I need to run some cables, and then hopefully I'll be able to stream Switch games as well as everything else. That'll be cool. Because I've played a lot of Switch games. Well, not a lot, but I put a lot of hours into Switch games, and I feel like that's a console I could also just show a lot more. And I could also do through that I can do these emulators and show you the Lane game and capture footage for that, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've heard good things about Ghost in the Shell for PS1 as well. I might check that out. Why do I think the Switch was successful? Form factor, a game of, well, more or less the game of the year being released for it, and nobody owned a Wii U, more or less. It was certainly not a successful console, so I think that made a lot of sense. But it's just the fact that, okay, this is a tablet and a console at the same time. Yes, there are compromises there, but Breath of the Wild is a AAA game, no question. Mario Rabbids, Super Mario Galaxy, Mario Kart 8, all that. Yeah, absolutely one game is enough to lure people. I know a lot of people for whom the Switch was a Zelda machine for months, and that was perfectly fine. They were fine with that, and I agree. I would, and it was for me too. Actually, I had other games, but I played Breath of the Wild exclusively on the Switch for like 3 months and had no problems. No problems with that decision. So, yeah, and knowing that obviously, it's that was not going to be the case forever. There would be other interesting games to play. I think was enough to say, okay, yep, this is it. Well, but it's not just it's not a blatant lure. I mean, because they're coming out with a new console after a clearly failed console, and they put a lot of effort into this game. And the circumstances behind Breath of the Wild made it clear that this was something that they had planned to bring out for the Wii U, and then they were like, okay, we're gonna hold off for a little while and make it for the Switch as well to be good for that console. But that's not a bad thing, right? That's not oh, let's trick people into buying a Switch. It's not a trick, partly because it's also out for Wii U. But the fact that, we put a lot of effort into this game, so we're going to put it on this thing, right? And yeah, Nintendo has a really, really, really long track record of making excellent games. Plus the fact that, let's be honest, given that track record and the fact that Nintendo says, this is our console. Hey, Ham. This is the thing we are going to be making games on. You either buy this or you don't get the latest Nintendo games anymore. It's like that's a good reason to sell or to buy the console. And again, starting with Breath of the Wild is a really good start. And they did a good job too of early in those announcements showing, okay, you know, we have a plan, we have Splatoon 2 coming, we have other games down the line, but we're also not going to claim that we're going to have 50 games, you know, in the next 3 months. So that I think they communicated that in terms, or fairly to the consumer, right? Where they knew the consumers would rebel if they tried to overpromise or if they tried to underpromise, you know. And again, it's an excellent piece of tech. Like, there's just no getting around the fact that you slide that into the dock and it works, and you put it on the dock and it works, and the Joy-Cons work. And obviously there are a handful of people online who have problems, and they scream and yell, and everyone says, oh, the Switch is, you know, the Switch doesn't work. It works fine for 99.999% of people. So yeah, I think it's just they made a good piece of hardware. It's kind of the fundamental thing of it. And it's like it's the same thing with, you know, I bought a lot of Apple products, you know, over the years. Not exclusively. I bought maybe 8 Apple products over the course of my life. Because I was like, okay, you know, I want a laptop. I want a laptop that will last for a long time and that will, you know, where everything will fit together. You know, a MacBook is a good example of that. And, you know, the money I invest in that, I know I will reap for a long time. You know, I can spend less and then have to replace that every year compared to a MacBook that will last for many years for, you know, higher price but longer, you know, longer lifespan. That is the idea there. You know, that doesn't mean, you know, the fact that people are attracted to that and the fact that people will go for that and pay for that and want that kind of experience doesn't make them dumb. It means they have figured through the trade-offs and figured, okay, these are the right trade-offs for me, right? Yeah, and the thing is, and there are a lot of games for the Switch. You know, besides the ports, the Neo Geo ports that have been going out, there are huge numbers of indies beyond just the Nintendo games. So the roster has been quite, you know, there's been plenty to play. I've been pretty active on the Nintendo Switch subreddit, and people are frequently saying on there, yeah, I don't have time to play all the games that I'm just interested in on the Switch. And yeah, exactly, Karian. They have, you know, good third-party game support. They made the Switch easy to develop for, apparently, for developers, so folks are able to kind of get things on there. The fact that, you know, Doom and Skyrim both run on the Switch is kind of mind-blowing to me. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, and the other reality too is that, you know, you're going to have people who don't like some of those games. You know, I have not bought Mario Odyssey. I have no interest in it whatsoever. I'm just not a Mario guy, and that's fine because there's plenty of other things for me to play. So that's fine. All right, so let us go over to the great debate. As I wanted to, I wanted to get a few examples. Oh, that's right, I had a thing over there. So, do I have a quick thing? Yeah, if you want something like the Switch, you always have a Vita. Good luck with that. And I don't mean that super critically. I mean just, you know, there we go. All right, let me grab. What was it? Okay, 1 second. There we go. I want to use this as an example for the debate, and then I also wanted to use this as an example, and with any other manga to anime adaptations that are good examples for this. Yeah, we'll use that, and we'll use that. Okay, good. Nice to have samples. That's right, we've got the Bayonetta ports coming to Switch. That's cool too. I enjoy the idea of Monster Hunter. I'm in the same boat. It's why I want to play it when it comes out. I want to give it a try, just see if I like it, because the idea of actually having to literally hunt, not just wander around a thing looking for sparkly things that take you to the next thing, that really appeals to me. And the idea that you are rewarded for smart play and for thinking things out. That really appeals to me. So we'll see. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to play the demo yet, or at all. All right, so let's talk about this. Yeah, I can do that. Do I have the pipe? Where'd the pipe go? Did I lose the pipe? I don't see the pipe. I must have moved the pipe. That's annoying. I'll have to dig out the pipe at some point, because that's important. Yeah, I'm curious about Anthem. I feel like Anthem might be one of those games where they're pouring money into the game, but it'll end up being disappointing. Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, I did not want to phrase it that way. That's okay. Thank you. That's how I wanted to quote that. All right. So I have these examples there. That's there. All right. I have to find the pipe that really annoyed everyone when I first used it. You guys remember the pipe from the old days of the channel, where I would be sitting in a chair with a pipe? And it's just a piece of plastic. But I wanted to use that for the great debate. Oh well. I'll find it at some point. Welcome to the great debate, where today I'm going to dive into a subject that frequently gets people really riled up about anime, or some aspect of the anime world. And today I'm going to tackle this thing that comes up that people say a lot. And I should point out, when I say I'm going to tackle this, I'm not going to necessarily take a side. I'm just going to kind of dive into the topic and look at why people would think that, and how accurate it might be. And it is this question down here: why do people say the manga was better? You should read the manga. The manga's better. Why would that be? I've got a chat room going here with some interesting stuff being talked about, so you'll hear me reference that every so often. The chat room's awesome. And you get this a lot with certainly a lot of famous anime. And most anime is adapting something, a manga or a video game or something. And when it's a manga, it's very reasonable to compare the two. And almost always you hear this thing, the manga is better. Why is that? Well, a couple of obvious reasons. Let's get those out of the way. The first is that if somebody's saying that, there's a good chance they read the manga before the anime came out. They're fans of the original manga. And as we all know, if you read the book before watching the movie, you'll like the book more. If you watch the movie before reading the book, you'll probably appreciate the movie more. So that's a factor. But it also is complicated by the fact that the manga is the original work. And a lot of people think that because the original work is the original work, it is a superior version. That's actually a flawed argument. Simply because it is not necessarily true that putting a work in a different medium automatically degrades it or devalues it. It simply puts it in a different medium, right? Psycho, Jaws, Fight Club, The Godfather, these were all books. These were all adaptations of books made into movies, right? No one's calling them slouches in the movie department. So, what do you do, right? Now, William points out in the chat room, one of the issues, that imagination is a big part of this, and this is very, very true. When you're reading a manga, you are imagining the actions of the characters. You're imagining how they are reacting. You're imagining how they're saying things. Your imagination fills in these gaps. And that's always going to be superior to a TV or movie version. Almost always. Because it is what works best for you. Right? So that is absolutely a thing the anime version has to contend with. And again, I think this is another thing that we have to be careful with, because it's in a sense unfair to judge movies this way, because they cannot just leave it up to your imagination. It is a visual medium. They have to provide you with the visuals of the thing, right? And I think that's one of those things where it's unfair, but it's also true that people have this problem with the medium. You know, we can argue about that, we can fight with it, but it is going to be something people struggle with on that. Now, Jode in the chat room also points out, and there's another really significant thing. You know, if you've read Akira, the original manga, and you go to watch the movie, you'll know that there are 6 volumes of this, right? This is basically the first movie, and then there are another 5 volumes of plot. So there's lots of stuff missing from that movie. That's a problem, because when you read the manga, you're going to say, well, but they didn't put in all this stuff. And that's, again, where we have to be a little careful, because they can't put in all of it necessarily, right? If they wanted to adapt Akira into an actual story, it would have to be like a 26-episode TV series as opposed to a movie. The movie cannot contain all that material. But then the question becomes, should they have made a movie out of it, right? Was that the right choice for that material? I think that's an interesting question when we look at what they chose to adapt. The other complexity there, too, is that, for lack of a better word, or lack of a better way of phrasing this, not everything is going to be appropriate to put into the anime, right? Sometimes manga authors go on tangents. Sometimes manga authors insert things that don't really have much to do with the story, or just kind of there momentarily that we may enjoy, but somebody adapting it might say, but this doesn't really help anything, so I'm not going to include that because I don't think it's helpful. I think it'll confuse people. That's part of adaptation, is taking something and saying, well, you know, I can't make the manga. I can't just remake the manga in anime. I've got to make some hard decisions here about what will work in this case, the animated medium, right? Now that's a really good point, Jode, in the chat room. One of the problems is that people generally don't notice a lot of these things. They don't notice the framing, the music, cinematography, pacing. They think in terms of, what are the plot events? This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. That is the movie. It's like there's a lot more to it than that. But because that one event was not in the movie, it was bad. And that's a very significant problem. And as Karian points, pacing. Pacing is a huge deal. Pacing is, I think, one of the big things people do not notice as a difference in the manga versus the anime. So I'm going to bring up something. Recent anime adaptation, The Ancient Magus' Bride. This is the manga of that first volume of the manga of Ancient Magus' Bride. And they decided when adapting this to adapt it pretty straight and to pace it similarly to the manga. And I personally think that was not the best choice, because the manga is very slow-paced. And the anime series feels very sluggish as a result. I think this would have worked better if it were more snappily paced. But they are trying to hold to the manga, I think, a little too closely. I think this is one of those things that would have benefited from a slightly snappier adaptation, right? And that's a really difficult thing. Another good example of this is Trigun. I actually have an example of that. But anyway, where's Trigun? Yeah, I got Trigun over there somewhere. The plot structure of Trigun the manga is very different from the plot structure of Trigun the anime series, because the author, Yasuhiro Naitao, was kind of still figuring out the characters and the plot structure and what he was trying to do in those early chapters of the manga. Once folks were able to sit down and read all of it, they could come up with a, for lack of a better term, a more effective structure for that story than the one he initially came up with. In fact, he said at one point that he thinks that the anime version of the structure of the story, at least when he was first introduced to it, was better than the pacing that he had for the manga and how all that was structured and done. Because again, you can sometimes you can look at something whole and realize, oh, this is how this all fits together, better than the author who's still trying to figure it out, week by week as he's drawing it to his deadlines. And that's something I think folks don't pay attention to when it comes to this stuff, and they should. That the pacing has to be different. It has to be adapted for anime in an effective way. And that sometimes means not following the pace of the manga. Here's the thing. An anime adaptation is an adaptation. It's not going to be exactly the same. And then you get some lucky things. And here's another, let's talk about this. Ghost in the Shell. Right? This is the original Ghost in the Shell manga release in America. Everyone loves the Ghost in the Shell anime film by Mamoru Oshii. I don't want to say loves. I don't say everyone loves. But that is a very, very, very highly regarded anime film, and it is not a close adaptation of this manga. It goes way off the rails. It adapts certain elements pretty closely, but it is very much its own story and its own thing. Because the director looked at it and said, okay, here are these pieces that I can extract into a movie, but just extracting those pieces, in other words, there are side stories and such in the manga that would just be that would distract from the tight narrative of a movie. But just extracting those things don't have enough connecting tissue. So he constructed the rest of the tissue that fleshed that out into a full body, a full shell, if you will. And so that's the thing, is that you can absolutely adapt something into a new work, into a new thing that is a fusion of the original work and the new thing, right? All of these things are all part of the adapter's job of looking at this and saying, how do we make this work as an anime series, right? You can't just put a frame on the screen, put another frame on the screen, and just go and move forward and move on from there. Except in some cases. Mushishi, famously, is an almost panel by panel storyboarded anime where they took it pretty much panel by panel. You can look at that. Each one of those turns into a shot in the anime series. Not precisely, right? But that's because that manga works very well in that way for an anime series, right? Some things certainly do fit that way, but that's not a guarantee. Just like Ghost in the Shell, those elements of Ghost in the Shell, worked well for that anime film and worked well for Standalone Complex, for example, as kind of a basis. So sometimes something like Mushishi will come along and that will work, but it's not a guarantee. Yep. Animation is not the same as manga. The amazing motion of Kill la Kill cannot be expressed in manga form. It just doesn't work in manga form, because that is a concept conceived as animation by animators who want to create animation. Obviously, you could draw a manga version of Kill la Kill, but it's not going to have the same power. It's not going to be communicated to the viewer. It's not going to come across the same way to the viewer as would, you know, as the anime does. What can you? Well, you can compare anything between paper and animation, right? They can all be compared. It's just a matter of comparing them fairly, of saying these are two different things. You know, how well does this thing fit the animation medium versus how well does this thing fit the comic medium? Good example. There are a lot of American comics. I'm gesturing at my American comic collection. That I think would work better animated or live action than they work as comics, because they're basically storyboards. You know, it's a person standing there talking to somebody else standing there talking to somebody else, and the action is very, very simple in that sense, where it's a guy punching somebody else. Okay, we know how to film that, and that doesn't really, you know, I think I would be more engaged watching this moving than I am in reading this comic, even though I'm reading it in the original version. Okay, so you're asking, so how do you compare those things? What are the elements that you use to compare those things? Great question, great question. So I think you can compare the pacing, because the pacing, you know, in a manga it is flexible, but there are also parameters around it, right? There are how many frames you use to get something across. There's how much you crowd into a panel. There's what you show in the panel, how much action is implied in the panel. That can certainly be there. And then also, obviously, the pacing of the animation itself. I think you can also look at character. How character is expressed, what of the characters you get across in the animated version versus the manga version. So, for example, Scott Pilgrim. Again, you're adapting, that's what, 6 volumes? Yeah, 6 volumes of comic into a movie that's going to be condensed. But you get a very... The characters that they do introduce and show you, in the film, they do communicate a lot of their personality in those brief moments. So even though it's very brief, you get a sense of those characters and their personality, which I think is a testament to that film and how well it's adapting that comic. That's the kind of thing you can look at. That, okay, yes, Knives feels like Knives in Scott Pilgrim. It's a slightly different take on Knives, but you know, they got the basic beats of that character. Excuse me. What else can you compare? Obviously, you can also compare art style. I think it is valid to look at the way that things are drawn. Again, recognizing that a character design for a manga has a different role to fill and can do different things than a character design for an anime series. So they have to be contrasted as opposed to compared directly. But I think you can also say, okay, you know, they did this thing with these character designs and these things with these character designs, and do they work? Another thing too, also relating to pacing, one of the big problems anime has, different than manga, as Karyan's pointing out in the chat room as well, is that if I'm reading a manga and happen to flip to this one thing, and I'm a little confused about what's going on, I can just glance back at the previous panel and glance forward. It's a lot easier to consume a manga random access, whereas with anime, it's very rare for somebody to actually rewind and go back and check things in the past. So manga can be looser in what it portrays, because it knows folks can go back and glance back at things. That's very different. You know, that's just one of those things that is hard. And then also, getting back to Karyan's central point, manga is a more casual thing, where I can read, you know, this Ghost in the Shell manga in a couple of hours, whereas Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex is a much larger commitment than that, right? And especially for a lot of these manga, I mean, it's a lot of time. So you get through a lot of manga material much quicker than you do anime material, and it's a little easier, I think, to pick up and put down a manga, a book, than it is to start and stop an anime series, remember where you were, what was going on, partly because, again, that difficulty of access. You're not going to glance back at where you were. And that actually is even further complexified, if you will, by the fact that anime traditionally, certain anime are aimed very directly at otaku, and a particular brand of otaku, the otaku who care and pay attention. So you are expected to notice things. You are expected to be paying attention. And, as Karyan, you're right. This is something where if you're watching Haruhi Suzumiya, there will be little, a couple of frame shots that they just really quickly blast at you, and little things off in the corner of the screen that you're supposed to notice because you are an otaku. You're supposed to be consuming this with every fiber of your being. So that's a much bigger expectation on you than just picking up a manga and watching it. And yeah, exactly, Hem. There are some things that don't translate to anime. Legend of the Twilight. I love Legend of the Twilight, the Dot Hack, spin-off story. But it's just that particular storyline would have seemed kind of weird to the more mass audience, so they changed it. Kind of makes. Is there a case where a manga can convey an action scene more effectively than an anime? I'm absolutely sure there is. It all hinges on that word effectively, right? Nobody's animated this scene, but there's a sequence actually in the Ghost in the Shell manga later on where they're fighting in various Fuchikoma against another force. And it's very confusing. It's very chaotic what's going on. And so you see folks sort of rounding around and you're not sure what's going on. And it's the kind of thing that I think in anime, frequently, that would be too clear to the viewer what's going on. Just because of, it's animated, so you can see what's going on. Because it's these little frames of things all throughout the page, I think that worked better for that kind of a sequence. Right? Action's hard and complex, though. Because action is action. It's all there in the word, right? In animation's all about movement. Well, technically. So that is the kind of thing that anime is by its nature going to be better at things like action. But certainly there are going to be cases where manga can do it better. And there'll also be certainly cases where it can be animated poorly and ineffectively, right? Yeah, and you certainly get times when a manga came after and folks prefer the manga. In fact, it's going on right now, Gundam The Origin, right? They made the anime series, then Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, the character designer, came back and started drawing his own manga version of Mobile Suit Gundam, and a lot of folks like that a lot better than the anime, but then that's complexified, if you will, by the fact that we're seeing the same thing we saw before in reverse. This version cuts out a lot of the Battle of the Week stuff in the TV series that didn't really further the plot, but kind of had to be there because, well, it's episode 5, it's time for another Battle of the Week. There has to be a battle in every episode. So, with the benefit of hindsight, the manga version can smooth out that plot in the same way that the anime can sometimes do that. And that's further complexified by the fact that often, when you're talking about an anime adaptation of a relatively recent manga, your typical situation, the anime is serving partly as an ad for the manga. It is being made partly by the publisher, or funded partly by the publisher, in the hopes that it will spur sales of the manga. So they don't want the anime to be wildly different than the manga, most of the time. Yeah, they want that to pull people back to reading the manga. In the case of something like Gundam, they don't care. Evangelion's a great case, where everyone in Japan knows the plot of Evangelion. They don't need the manga to follow that plot, so they can, they can tell their own story. They can do their own version of that storytelling. I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, in those cases, I think it works, but it's rarely the motivation for most anime adaptations of manga. Those are kind of ads, right? So yeah, it's complicated. There are a lot of different factors in all of this, and I think it's something that we have to pay attention to. We have to be aware that manga is a medium and anime is a medium, right? Hemhoki asks, could you fit more information on one page where reader can just take it all in? Whereas an anime, you have to replay a particular part over and over to get everything that's happening. Technically, yes. But also, remember, the anime can also cram a lot of information into, a single frame and do the exact same thing. Akira does this. The anime version of Akira just gives you tons of information and just hangs on that shot while you just consume everything that you're seeing. So, and that's something actually that's typical of the anime medium. Anime, as its own approach to animation, does frequently. Give me a shot and then just let me watch that thing and let me consume that thing without worrying about constantly moving it and constantly, cutting from one thing to another. A great example of this is an anime series called Quiet Country Cafe, or Yokohama Kaidashi Kiko. Adaptation of a manga, 2 OVAs. And it's this very quiet, laid-back story. So a lot of the shots are just a sunset. And you just watch the sunset for a while. It's not overplayed, it's not overdone, but the point of the sequence is the character is walking up to this one vantage point to look at a sunset, and so you see the sunset for, a good couple of seconds, right? And you just appreciate that thing, and you cut back and more stuff happens. So that is one of those things that happens. And then you have sound and you have motion to add information as well. You have how a character, does that. You'll notice, by the way, in anime, there's something that anime does that other approaches to animation do not do. It seems to be very unique to the Japanese approach to animation. You'll cut between two different characters who are frustrated with each other. And remember, anime is a very limited animation medium, but you'll cut to, and this happens all the time in shoujo, you'll cut to a character and her eyes will narrow. You cut back to somebody else and her eyes will open slightly. And you think, they could have just cut to her with her eyes narrowed. They didn't have to animate those 4 or 5 frames of her eyes slowly narrowing. But that's important. That communicates something, and it draws your eye, because there's movement going on, your eye is drawn to movement. Again, I can't think of any other, Western animation doesn't do that, limited animation, European animation, Disney animation doesn't really do that. But anime is constantly drawing your attention to a character's inner thoughts just through animating little bits of their face and how those are moving. But you're absolutely right, Van Riley. Van Riley in the chat room, that manga is more interactive in its own way and more imaginative in its own way. When I'm reading this, I'm imagining, how those characters are speaking. I'm imagining what that room smells like and feels like. Is it cold? Is it warm? All that kind of stuff. And I think that is a more intimate experience than anime, where you are essentially consuming the material. Now again, otaku have helped to elevate that a little bit by saying, yeah, we're consuming, but we're consuming very actively. The standard otaku in Japan, or the stereotype of the otaku in Japan, actually that's not correct either. The the kind of fan that fans believe they are in Japan, right? That standard that fans hold to themselves in Japan is that they really pull in every pixel on that screen is being pulled into their eyes while they're watching it. So that helps make it a little more interactive, slightly more interactive. It's why I think, you know, the Moe phenomenon was such a big thing, because people were, you know, getting so invested in these characters. But there's no question, you know, when you're reading a manga, when you're doing this, especially for a black and white medium, you have to imagine those colors too, right? So it is a much more intimate experience than your typical kind of manga thing, or typical anime thing. That is just very, very true. So you know, those are two different aspects to the story. It's one of the reasons why anime is often feels a little slower paced than the manga, because they got to make sure that everyone can understand what's going on, right? They have to be paced for the slowest fan, right, in a sense. Especially the ones that are aimed at a larger audience. It has to be clear, so they let it go. They let it kind of move at a slower pace for that reason. All right, I think we're going to pause, really stop the discussion there. I want to thank everyone in the chat room for their, as usual, excellent, very thoughtful, very deep discussion on this topic. This is wonderful. We'll be doing more of this in weeks to come on other aspects of anime and different elements of geekdom, and kind of diving deep into these things. So, as always, thank you all very much for being here. Hope you'll be here next week. We are not done yet tonight, however. So, that was just ending the great debate. Give me one more moment. I'll be right back with a review of Sister's All You Need. Be right back.
The next show will start in 4 minutes. The next show will start in 3 minutes. The next show will start in 2 minutes. next show will start in 1 minute.
Oops. Sorry about that. Ended a little earlier than I thought. Okay. Let us go ahead and move back on to the giveaway, because I wanted to make sure we got that done. Actually, no. We're going to wait a little bit longer on the giveaway. And first, I will go ahead and blow my nose. Excuse me a moment. Unprofessional of me. Supposed to do that during the break. That's the whole point of the break. All right. So, let us move instead to the review of the night. We'll be twitching a little later on tonight, after the review and after the giveaway. We'll move over to Twitch for Otaku no Cooking and shortbread cookies and all that stuff. In fact, before I forget, thank you for reminding me. Just turn on the oven to 350. Get that all warmed up and heating up before we go any further. Oh, and in fact, I should close the door. At some point, that's going to beep. I'd rather not do all that. Hey, Joseph, you did not miss anything at all, except for a few old intermission stuff. So, let us go ahead and start the review. You know what? I don't like the position of the title. Can I? Why can't I move that over? Ah, there we go. Yeah, give it a little more space. That's better. Okay, I need a. Need a nice drink. Hopefully one that doesn't have any bits of plastic in it. Nah. Nice hot drink going down the throat. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. Okay. Much better. All right. Let's start this review, shall we? What am I drinking? I am drinking Earl Grey tea. Tea Earl Grey hot in sci-fi parlance. I normally have a little wine when I'm doing the stream. Just a little bit, you know, just like a little bit in a tall glass. So it's maybe 4 gulps of wine. Just a little something to clear the palate, as well as the tea. Tea is a great thing. Okay. Welcome back for today's review of A Sister's All You Need. Now, this anime series had got something of a reputation online for a scene that I will insert here of the main character eating panties. Now, it should be made very clear that this is a fantasy sequence from the first episode where the main character is pitching a story concept to his editor, and the editor is saying, no, no way, no, we're not going to do this, no, this is a terrible idea. It is a really goofy, over-the-top concept, because the main character has a fetish for little sisters. A fetish that he does not carry over into real life, I should point out, in the sense that he does not act on this in real life. But he just loves the little sister idea, and he's very much an otaku for that idea, and is trying to work its way into every story. What the show is actually about, though, as it turns out, is it's about writers. It's about a group of a handful of writers, all of them light novel authors, and their various frustrations, and generally they hang out in the protagonist's room and frequently play board games and card games, actually. One of the neat things about this is that you will actually see them playing board games and card games that you can buy, and I've played some of them personally. And so it's kind of sort of an ad for card games in its own way. Turns out it's also, excuse me, probably an ad for alcohol. They drink beer pretty much every night, sometimes wine, and that gets featured in the show. And it looks like a brewery was one of the sponsors of the show. But fundamentally, it's about folks hanging out and dealing with the frustrations of their business, of their line of work, right? That you have to produce this material and how hard that is sometimes. Which is interesting because they tend to work in the light novel world, and as you may know from being familiar with this whole thing, light novels are sort of anime-style novels. So there's actual, text, but they tend to be about, beautiful fantasy characters and ridiculous sci-fi concepts, and the kind of thing that you can easily adapt into anime or into a manga. So it has this pop feel to it, but the characters are actually dealing with their issues of all that, and then you get some other side characters as well. The animation in general is definitely effective and gets across what needs to get across. The animation quality is quite consistent throughout the entire run of the series. There are not noticeable periods where the quality dips, halfway through or things along those lines. And that said, it is basically about, again, characters sort of hanging out in a guy's bedroom. So there's nothing really involved or complex in the animation. There are a few sequences, though. One of the cool things is that they also adapt scenes from the novels the characters are writing and scenes from the games they're playing. So there's one episode where they play a D&D style tabletop role-playing game, and so you get fully animated sequences of their characters in this fantasy world, interacting with the weird stuff that kind of comes up in a typical D&D session, which is a lot of fun. So the animation is, again, effective for all of that, and I certainly didn't have any issues with it. But it didn't really blow me away much of the time. The overall direction of the show is similarly effective, but not masterful. Part of the problem is that it is a relational show, so it's kind of hard to be amazing with how you arrange the art and the visuals of a show in a show where everyone's just talking. It can be done. I've seen it done. But this is one of those shows where, okay, it's just, shots of characters talking. Which is not the only thing they do, but it's directed very competently. And I don't mean that as a slap down. It works. And no complaints, fine, good job there. I will say there are certainly moments where the camera does linger on certain things or does cut to certain moments that reveal elements of what a character is thinking, what's going on in a character, without having them actually say it. This is a show in which the characters are often thinking different things than they're actually saying, and that is communicated well through the direction and what the director chooses to show the audience. So good job there. Now, a show like this does live and die on its characters. I actually find the characters in here is particularly a strong suit of the show. As long as you sit back and realize it's an anime series, it's an anime series clearly aimed at otaku, but it's not trying to be particularly deep or complicated or complex. This is a story of characters who are fundamentally friends and seeing how that friendship works out in their life, in their lives. What that does for them, which I think is a really an interesting concept, and I think does come across well in the characters. The archetypes are essentially there, but these are multidimensional characters. They have goals that they're trying to accomplish, and what they say and what they do are part of that, and reflect those aspects of their personality. And you see where sometimes their personality and what they're expected to do clash, and especially in the case of the main character and what he has to deal with. And that I really found interesting and effective. I think they did a fine job of expressing that. I should point out the main character is kind of a slacker, and you do see how that impacts his life. He is not a slacker for the entire anime series, though, and so it's not as frustrating as it can be in some of these shows where, you know, slacker character is slacker for 12 episodes. And it's like, just stop it, right? That does get addressed to a certain extent. I should also point out there is one character who is constantly suggesting very sexual acts of the main character, but is doing so essentially in jest. She is joking about it pretty much the entire time. She is romantically attracted to the main character, but she is basically kidding him with this the whole time. She's getting under his skin. This is the kind of thing that really bugs him. And so it's like friends who do that a lot. So you gotta, you know, the character initially seems either, you know, way out of line, or, well, just way out of line. And you're just like, why would you have a character like that? But once you see how their personalities work with each other, especially over the first 2 or 3 episodes, it fits. It makes sense. So I think that, you know, that kind of works. Again, just kind of be aware of that. The overall sort of tone of the series in terms of, you know, kind of believability it is firmly in this otaku slice of life, you know, world where aliens don't invade. Spoiler alert. You know, characters don't in the actual show, you know, pull things out of hammer space. They sometimes do in the, you know, the scenarios that they write, but, you know, it is grounded in the real world. But the characters themselves are often somewhat over the top in their personalities. You'd be hard pressed to find several of these characters in the real world. I don't really have a favorite character in the show. That's kind of not how my mind works. And they were interesting in different ways. I definitely appreciated the different ways that those characters were assembled. So yeah, you're not going to find anything. And it's one of the neat things about the show, actually, is that while you will not find any variations from normal daily life in their reality, because they're writing these fantasy stories and because they're playing these board games, you get a lot of that fantasy in the show anyway, right? So that works cool in a very effective way. Do want to mention voice acting. I watched this with the Japanese dub. I found the voice of the main character kind of grating. He has that slightly nasally kind of voice to him, which I understand was a choice, but I think was an ineffective choice for the protagonist of your show. I just found it to be a difficult voice to listen to over the long term from a main character. Overall, I think the female characters were well done. They're very anime voices, right? They especially the female voices sound rather fake. They sound like, okay, we're doing a high-pitched anime voice. But, you know, emotional tones are there. The fundamentals of the show are there. They just don't really sound like Japanese girls I actually hear talking on, you know, documentaries, things along those lines, right? It's an anime. It is definitely an anime series. So overall, I was turned in. Somebody recommended this show to me, probably because I'm an aficionado of board and card games, very amateur, and said, "Oh, you should check this out because they hang around and play board and card games a lot." And I found myself marathoning the series. It was just a really fun, light, entertaining show in that sense that they do a few over-the-top things for comedic effect, but overall they're telling a story about people working and trying to deal with working, and trying to deal with the frustration and the stress of your job. Exactly. It's a little like Comic Party or Genshiken, but a little more down to earth, a little more grounded than those shows. And I just found myself enjoying it. It's a little bit like a box of chocolates, right? It's not particularly nourishing, but it's definitely filling and it's very tasty. And there are moments, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, there are moments of character development. There are moments of relational philosophy, where folks talk and think about what they want out of life and what they want out of other people, and how that's not necessarily working out the way they want it to, and about how that's life, right? So there's a little more depth to this show than it would appear at first glance, and especially given that opening sequence, which is just so ridiculous. So if you can get past that sequence and realize how bonkers it is, dive deep, and you're gonna find something that I found just quite entertaining. So I hope you find that useful, and I hope to see you in the next review. And I hope until then, I hope you will dig deeper into your own favorite works. All right, that was the review. All right, I don't need to go to that. I've done that. I've done the review. I've done the debate. Let's do the giveaway. It is time for that, because who doesn't like getting stuff, right? All right, so I'm going to give away this copy of Memories. As a reminder, this is a DVD of Memories. It is, I believe, it does not say what region it is. I believe it's region 0, or DVD 5 actually. Interesting. So it's playable in multiple regions. I hope. Should be. We'll see. This is the Hong Kong release, I believe, of Memories, the Katsuhiro Otomo anthology film, 3 different stories, all of which Katsuhiro Otomo conceived of, did manga of, and then 2 directors did 2 of the sequences, and he did the 3rd one. The first one, Magnetic Rose, is significant because it is the first major animated work, to my knowledge, with the involvement of Satoshi Kon, who would go on to make a lot of interesting work. Less than we all wished. So, yes, this is it. If it's not the Hong Kong release, then it's just a pirated fan sub. I don't know. So, anyway, I'm going to give this to whoever is at the top of the chat window in about 5 seconds. Whoever's up there will get a copy of Memories. So I'm looking up there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hemhoki, congratulations. For your comment, green tea with honey. At the top of my chat window. So Hem, you get a copy of Memories. And I will ship that to you. Do me a favor and let me see here how we're going to do this. Oh, that's right. What we can do is, let's see here. Tell me in the chat room the beginning of your email address. And then, oh, Discord, perfect. Yeah, just let me know on Discord. Message me on Discord with with your address. Your address is better than my address, right? just send me that, and I will send you this. If I get that this evening, then I will ship this out tomorrow morning to you. And that's been going pretty well. So the last few giveaways I have done, I was able to ship those out, the following day. I do plan on doing further giveaways, basically one every other week. So no giveaway next week, but another in 2 weeks. And we will just keep on doing that. And I have a bunch of stuff to give away. As I mentioned before, extras and spares for my collection. And I got plenty in that collection. So that's that. Yeah, congratulations, Hem. Thank you all for that. I'm now going to transition over to the Otaku no Cooking over on the Twitch stream. I need about a minute to fire that up. Yeah, we do need that scene from Eva. I will see if I can pull that scene and just, do that as like an animated GIF or something. And show that. Maybe do a congratulations, there. That's a great idea, Liquidus. Thank you. Love that shot. All right, so like I mentioned, I'm going to switch over to Twitch. Meanwhile, you guys get to watch a cartoon over here on YouTube as I switch over. So go ahead and head over to twitch.tv/geekarchaeology. Check that out. I will continue the stream over there. And meanwhile, you get this.
Beware of pins. Now beware, have a care, you're just filled with air. A single pin would rip your skin, and the pin-cushion man in the forest there would pop you both if you don't take care. Oh, such trash! In a flash I will settle his hash. I'll bust right in and twist his chin. I'll get rough, I'll get tough, I'll just call his bluff.
Oh no, please, oh please don't go.
Oh, come on.
I'm coming. I'm scared.
I'm not much. Oh!
I'm the old pincushion man, terror of Balloony Land. Folks all hate me, how they hate me, tickles me the way they rate me. Always have a pin at hand, that's the reason I am panned. How I stop 'em when I pop 'em.
Oh, that pincushion man's a fake. I'm not afraid of his pins.
So you're not a... Open the gates. I want to come in.
Oh, I'd better not. The folks would blow up if I let you in.
None. I want to give you something.
Well, that's different. What are you going to give me?
This!
You
The pincushion man! Quick, we must sound the alarm!
Holy smoke! Ready? Aim! Fire!
Contact!
Fire!